What exactly is the latest? It seems that Labour is now becoming more of a force to prevent this no-deal Brexit. What can they actually and what are they doing?
Right, so Parliament has been promised a meaningful vote on the final Brexit deal, on the withdrawal deal. But what Keir Starmer is saying is that, the government position so far is basically that Parliament will be able to vote either to accept what May brings back from Brussels, or basically run the risk of the UK falling out into a sort of no-deal chaos scenario. And so the Labour Party is saying that if Parliament rejects the deal, then they should sort of decide what would be the path ahead. And there are several options for that. One could be, seeking an extension of Article 50, so that you postpone the Brexit process. And it's an interesting amendment because it's one that one can imagine a few Tory Remainer, some of those Tory rebels could support, and that's very much where the Remona fight back is right now. It's sort of in Parliament. It's a backbenchers Parliament, and in the middle there are probably a majority for some kind of soft Brexit.
But if you, just in terms of times, right, and I guess timelines, if Keir Starmer is basically saying that if the Prime Minister deal is defeated, it must be for Parliament to say what happens next and not for the executive. How much power does this take away from Theresa May just in the negotiations?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I suppose the government would argue that it weakens her negotiating position because it would therefore be in Europe's interest, or rather, if Europe gave the UK a very bad deal, then it would get rejected, and then you can imagine the situation where the UK ends up extending its membership. And so, the Labour Party in the past has said that, for example, they didn't want a second referendum because it would weaken the negotiating position, that it would encourage Europe to offer the UK a bad deal, and so you can imagine that it would play into that. But I think, there is a certain amount of momentum at the moment around the sort of Remainer fight back. We've got Chuka Umunna is finally sort of organising some of these grassroots organisations. You've got the speech from Tony Blair today, and the point that Blair makes today is quite an interesting one. Whatever you think of the party politics, he makes a valid point, which is that the UK is going to leave the EU before it knows what its future relationship with its most important trading partner is going to be. And I think, he's trying to really hammer home that point, which is that the vote that Parliament is going to get is not going to be meaningful because it won't include a vote on the future relationship. And that's because the EU position from the very beginning has been, what we're going to get is a divorce deal, but about the future relationship, all that will be is a political statement about the future relationship. There's not going to be a done and dusted trade deal by the time the UK leaves in March 2019.